Besides in 1971, I made the trip back again in 1978. This was because my son Mike, for his graduation, wanted to go down to Tennessee on the boar hunt. Here we see the 1978 crew. The Tennessee line was a welcome sight. When we come into Jamestown, you look for a red house. This was Joe Simpson's. This is where you leave your vehicles, and you'll get into Joe Simpson's four-wheel drive vehicles to make the trip back into PARCH Creek. The ride back into PARCH Creek was an exciting part of the hunt also, as it took us 3.5 hours to go 7 miles. You went across riverbeds and through deep rutted roads. You know, we asked Joe Simpson why he didn't grade these out. He did have dozer equipment, but he said this made the part of the hunt that was different from other lodges. He had to replace brake linings on his vehicles every 1,000 miles. This particular time when we went in, we started out with 2 vehicles, but the wheel came off of the Bronco we was in, so we all ended up going in there in this van. Joe Simpson's lodge sits back in the mountains and down in the valley. The original building has been there since 1846. There's no electricity at Joe Simpson's lodge. All your lights and everything that he has in there runs off of propane. It's a beautiful setting back in here. You have the creek that runs through and the many mountains that you can look up into. You're always greeted happily by Joe Simpson's on your arrival. And here we see the archers out early in the morning discussing what they're going to do on their hunt. Now, if you're hunting wild boar with bow or with pistol, Joe Simpson requires you to use dogs. The dogs actually make the exciting part of the hunt. Joe Simpson recommends, if you're going to hunt with a pistol, to use at least a .44. With a bow, he recommends 50 pounds. Of course, whenever you're hunting with a pistol or with a bow, you always have the guide with you or somebody to back you up with a rifle. Joe Simpson has 500 acres of his own, plus he leases 2,000 acres of government land. Here we see Archer Bill Morris as he explains to Archer Frank Lawrence just what he has to do in order to shoot these boar. The best dogs that you can use when hunting wild boar are bay dogs. A good bay dog will get the boar bayed up for you so that you can get in to get a good close shot. Most of your shots on these wild boar that you're taking with a bow would be under 20 yards. Right near Joe Simpson's place right here, there's an old cemetery. And here you see with Tom Hutchins, this dog that's been cut up in the face by a wild boar. Wild boar are dangerous. You can either hunt on Joe Simpson's at 500 acres, or you can go up into the mountains to hunt. The first day that we was down there in 1971, we elected to go up into the mountains to do our hunting. The terrain is very rugged, and on the first day, Jerry Borowski right here and Frank Lawrence, they had to give up on the hunt as we went up into the mountains because they weren't physically able to do it. You do have to be in good condition. The first day of our hunt, we was up in the mountains at this point where you're seeing on the video. And of course, any hunt that you go on, you always have to have the funny guy with you. And of course, for us, it's always Dick Hemming here. I think he had Joe Simpson believing that he was actually going to hunt with that bow. But that's the fun of it, to have a good time, enjoy yourself. And you see the archers here, they're on a 1978 hunt as they're getting a little practice in. It's Mike Morse and Ron Sonkrant. Joe Simpson has very good dogs. He uses Catahoulas. He has some pit bulls and Redbone. Now here we find the archers decide to go out this first morning, Dick Hemming and Mike Morse, as Dick Hemming wants to hunt some wild goats. Some hunters from the previous day had told Dick about these goats that they'd spotted up in the mountainside. So Dick decided to go up and see if he could get a shot at one. Here we see him working his way through the mountains, and as he's looking down through there, he spots his Corsican ram. But that's not what he's there after. He's after the goats. So he gets up on another ridge and he spots the herd of goats. Getting up on these goats is not an easy task, as their eyesight is very good. At this point here, it looks like Dick would have an easy shot, but I'm on telephoto with the movie camera, and the goats are actually farther out in front of Dick than what they look. Right here you'd have about a 35-yard shot, but the goat does not give him an opening to get an arrow off. Dick is not hunting just any goat. He selected this black goat that he's seen in this herd, and he decides that's the one he wants to take. Here we see Dick as he works his way through the mountains to try to get a shot at the black goat, and the goat does separate from the rest of the herd. Now in order to get this goat, Dick has to work himself ahead of these goats, and through the efforts of Mike Morse and Ken Wagner, they get Dick a chance to get a shot at this goat as they run the goat to him. You can see Dick making his draw as the goat approaches, and he releases his arrow, and you see the arrow as it enters the chest cavity of the goat. Dick made a nice shot on this goat, probably the last chance he would have had to get it. As the efforts put into getting this goat for Dick from Ken Wagner and Mike Morse was 4.5 hours. Here we see Ken Wagner congratulating him along with Mike Morse, and Dick does his little war dance. The cameraman here is shaking hands with Dick, along with Ron Sonkrant. And as Dick makes his way back down the mountain with his goat, it brings back memories of when we was down there in '71 for me, when I did the same thing that Dick did. Decided to go after the goats up in the mountains. And here we find us in 1971. This is Irv Schilke and myself. I'm making my way across, trying to get in on these goats. As I say, to get a shot at these goats is not as easy as you would think because of their eyesight. I spent a lot of time trying to get close enough to get a good broadside shot. I picked out the goat that I wanted. But I wasn't able to get in close enough here to get a good standing shot. These goats right now are about 45 yards from where I'm at. They herded up on the top of the hill and broke down. This gave me a chance to draw and get a shot at the goats, but I had to take a running shot, and the last goat was the goat I was after. As I released my arrow and I seen it hit, I knew that I had a good shot on that goat. Yes, hunting the wild goats was an added thing to the wild boar hunt. I know that it was a good workout for us, as getting these goats was not easy. My partner, Irv Schilke, was successful also in getting his goat. But this took the efforts of all the guys that was on the hunt to give the archers a chance to get these goat. Bob Schilke twisted his ankle and had to be taken back on the tractor. Being followed by Frank Lawrence and Jerry Borowski. There we see the guides. That was the hard part, was because the guides had motorcycles and we had to walk. But here you see they brought our goats in, and all the archers coming in are pretty tired out because this was a one-day hunt and it took the efforts of everybody. Now they're ready to go out and hunt some wild boar. As I say, hunting the wild boar, you have to use dogs. The dogs actually make the hunt more exciting. This day we're making our way up along the mountainsides, listening for the dogs to get a boar bayed up so that we can get a shot at him. When you hear the dogs, you know that when you get there that they're going to have the boar bayed up. These dogs were well trained, and when it was time to get a shot off, the guide, Granny, all he would do would be tell the dogs, "Get out of there, dogs," and the dogs would back away from the boar, and then you would make your shot. Here we see the dogs have picked up a boar. You'll see how fast they can run. You can see the boar as he makes his way down the mountainside, how quick they actually are. These boar can run up to 45 miles an hour. Here we see Tom Hutchins as he shoots his boar with his .38 pistol. This boar weighed 450 pounds. It's a large boar. Tom hit this boar 5 times right in the shoulder. Although the guides would dress out the game for you, Tom elected to do his own. Here we see Archer Frank Lawrence as the dogs have got some boar bait up. Frank gets his arrow away. As soon as the boar are hit and hurt at all, the dogs will move right in. Now here's Irv showing Frank the way that you have to shoot these boars. Shoot them from the top, Frank. Shoot them from the top. Now we're going out with Archer Frank Shirley. He's going to be the archer to get a shot on this boar. This is from the hunt in 1978. You can see Frank gets an arrow in and drops the boar right away. The dogs move right in as the boar is hurt. Now to get congratulations from Mike Morse. And the dogs get some other boar going later on, and Archer John Frizzell will have his chance to get a shot. Here you can see the boar. The dogs have got it bait up, and John's making his way in to get an arrow off. You can see the arrows that hit this boar. You'll see the dust as it comes off. The red boar are Russian boar. Now the dogs have got the boar in there. They're called back off by Granny, and John's making his way in now. If you keep an eye on this boar now, you'll see as the arrow hits as the dust comes off. The arrow passes straight through. There you see the hit. The boar goes downhill with the dogs after it. John knocks another arrow and gets another shot, hitting the boar in the spine, and the boar goes right down. The dogs move right in, of course, because the boar is hurt bad. When the boar's at full strength, the dogs will stay back as they have a lot of respect for the wild boar. Here the dogs are after some more boar. Archer Mike Morse is going to get an arrow in. If you watch here, you'll see the white fletch as the arrow hits. This boar really spurns up the leaves and charges after the dogs. You can see here that when the boar goes after one dog, another dog will move right in and grab the boar. They've got the boar bait up again, and Mike will put another arrow in. You can see the arrow as it hits, and the boar is ready to go down. Both shots that Mike made were good shots, almost identical hits. Here the dogs have a boar bait up, and Archer Dick Hemming is going to make his way in to see if he can get an arrow in. The dogs have got the boar bait up, but Dick can't get an arrow in until the dogs are out of the way. Granny hollers in there, "Get out of there, dogs," and the dogs back away. But one of the dogs runs right back in, helicopter. It's called helicopter because his tail is always spinning. Here Dick gets an arrow. You'll see the arrow as it goes down through this boar. Now actually it looks like Dick is pretty close here, but I'm on slow motion with the camera. You've seen the arrow go there, and on telephoto. I'm actually back from Dick about 15 yards, and Dick is probably 15 yards from that boar when he made the shot. Here the boar moved over and gave Dick a chance to get an arrow in to finish him off. You see that the boar will stumble right away when the arrow makes its hit. There's the hit, and the boar starts to go down. This boar goes after the dogs too. But the second arrow that Dick shot finished his boar off. He made his way down to the creek, and that's where the hunt on this boar ended. Because I was on slow motion and also telephoto, the actual time that Dick made the second arrow hit and the boar died was less than 5 minutes. Here the dogs have got a boar bait up in a cave. This is a boar that Jack Tyberg had picked out to shoot, and Jack is up over the top on the ledge over above this cave. When he gets a shot, he shoots straight down, putting the arrow right between the boar's shoulder blades, and the boar goes down instantly. You can see that it was quite an effort for Jack on this hunt. Now the dogs have picked up another boar that was on the edge of a clearing, and Ron Sonkran is going to take a shot at this. The dogs back away, but Ron can't get a shot right here at the boar. The boar makes his way up the side of the mountain, and Ron got another arrow off. We went down on these hunts in March. This is the best time of the year because the foliage is down and you can see the game animal better. You can get a better shot at the boar. Ron's being congratulated by Dick Hemming. And the guide, he made a nice shot on this boar. Now you can see the results of the wild boar hunt. The archers did real well on this hunt. They got most of the boar with one arrow kills. The most arrows that they shot was 2. Here's Frank Lawrence getting his shirt tail cut off, along with Irv Schilke. Any archer that misses a shot gets a shirt tail cut off, and Joe Simpson hangs it up in the lodge. This kind of activity at the lodge, plus in the evening when Joe Simpson and his guys bring out their banjos and guitars, that's a big part of this hunt. Here Bob Schilke gets his shirt tail cut off as he lists Tom Hutchins. Like I say, the activity in the evening in the main building and that is a big part of the hunt. When Joe and them start playing the fiddles and stuff and giving everybody a good time. Now they'll cut the meat up when you get ready to leave, or you can take your animal home whole. Most of the archers decided that they wanted to take their pig home without being cut up. On the hunt in 1971, we rented a U-Haul trailer. And the purpose of the U-Haul trailer was so that we could load the boar and that in there for the trip back. Then we went into town and packed everything in ice. That kept the meat from spoiling. The archers are leaving Joe Simpson's Parch Corn Creek Lodge now. Joe's lodge only stayed open for one more year after this year as the government canceled Joe's lease and he opened up a national park in the Smoky Mountains. But the trip in and the trip out of Joe Simpson's was well worth going down there for the hunt. I only wish that he was able to have stayed open. That would have given other archers in the future a chance to go to a first-class place to hunt the wild boar. Here you can see that they're loading the boar into the trailer. These boar went anywhere from 175 pounds up to Tom Hutchins' 450-pound boar. 450 pounds is an extraordinarily large boar. Here the archers are arriving back at the house, or at Bill Morris's house, and